Why are we facing the humanitarian crisis that we are facing now? Let me just start off by saying what's the scale of that crisis. On the 17th of November, you had the UN Special Envoy for Afghanistan tell the Security Council that almost 60% of Afghanistan's 38 million people face critical levels of hunger. And this is going to get worse over the winter months. Was the situation much better before the Taliban took over? There'd been dislocations, massive internal dislocations, displacements within the country. There'd been drought, and then there was COVID. All these factors combined, but there were already high levels of poverty and hunger in Afghanistan. Quite obviously, what's happened after the Taliban took over, if you're going to say who's responsible, well, they are now in control of the country. They took over militarily, but they have absolutely no experience in governance. The infrastructural institutions of the state have collapsed. And you know, how do you manage the economy when you don't have the technocrats that you need? And you have ideologues put in critical positions. You know, there's a lot written about Western sanctions being primarily responsible for the crisis. The humanitarian crisis as it exists today, in particular the hit that the Afghan economy has taken. And to some extent, that's true. You know, banks are running out of money. The economy is on the verge of collapse. But humanitarian assistance has not been made conditional by the international community, and by that I mean, quite obviously, the US and its Western allies. Nor has humanitarian assistance been made conditional to the red lines that have been drawn, which include representative government, the rights, fundamental rights of Afghans, including women and girls, and counterterrorism commitments. The international financial institutions have not made these red lines conditional for humanitarian assistance. The question then arises, how do you deliver that assistance? Now, clearly there are some who believe that the Afghan government can only manage to deliver assistance on the scale that it's needed. But if there is that collapse of institutional infrastructures, which are the institutions in the state?
Put the mic closer.
Yeah. Which are the institutions that have been delivering assistance that can actually identify needs and can manage at least to minimize the scale of human suffering? The UN, quite obviously, UN agencies have been working in the country for the past decades. You have the international NGOs and local NGOs that have been delivering assistance to vulnerable people beyond the cities and into the countryside. So if there is no conditionality on humanitarian assistance, then the question remains on who is responsible for not allowing that assistance to be provided. If you actually look at what the UN agencies are doing, some innovative ways they're addressing this issue. For example, salaries to teachers. UNICEF says we can deliver the cash directly to their bank accounts, but there is a slight conditionality, and I think it makes sense, which is remove the sanctions on girls going to school beyond the 6th grade. Then the teachers who are going to teach them can get their salaries. The same kind of a model can be used quite easily for health workers as well, delivering the cash into the banking systems, directly into their bank accounts. But then the issue still remains on who gets the assistance. Quite obviously, we have an issue at stake, which is the Taliban's refusal to compromise on, for example, girls' education. If they were to compromise, then I think it would be so much easier to deal with the way that the education sector and employees in the education sector can get a lifeline, a financial lifeline. For health workers, again, the problem lies in the fact that if restrictions are placed on women delivering health services, donors are also going to find it difficult to disperse that assistance to women and girls who are desperately in need and much more vulnerable in many ways. Unfortunately, it seems that the Taliban are resorting to, well, it's a little bit like I'll put a gun to my head if you don't give me what I want. So if you don't provide us assistance, and if there's a humanitarian calamity in Afghanistan, then the refugees are going to come to your countries. We won't be able to deal with terrorism unless you provide that assistance. Instead, they need to figure out now, as Nadir said, and Lutfullah, they are governing the state, and they have to deliver on the rights of citizens, every citizen. And the most important right at this moment, as we speak, is human survival. Thank you.